He simply stabbed the sand a few times with his bayonet. But the next second, something strange happened. Terrifying quicksand suddenly appeared beneath his feet. Yet instead of running away, he excitedly called all his teammates over.
The well! The well!
Once all his teammates had rushed over, he instantly began dancing with joy, because quicksand meant there might be a water source. To verify their hunch, the group joined forces to start digging. To their surprise, after they lifted the wooden planks, they actually discovered a well. At first, they thought they'd struck gold, but when the team leader threw a stone down, a heavy, muffled thud echoed back up. In that instant, they were overcome with disappointment. However, the team leader wasn't about to give up. He immediately ordered Jack to climb down and investigate, so Jack carefully climbed down. However, he found the bottom of the well was filled with sand. Just as he was about to climb back up in disappointment, he suddenly felt a damp spot on the well wall, and unexpectedly discovered a stone dripping with water. Jack was thrilled to have found a water source, and quickly asked his teammates to lower a container down. After all, this was the Sahara Desert. To avoid wasting this hard-won water, Jack first cupped his hands to catch the dripping water, kicked the metal container over with his foot, and finally poured the water into it. Seeing that this method worked, Jack hurriedly shouted for them to throw down a few more containers. Once the containers were lowered, Jack poured the water into them. He didn't waste the water left in his hands either. He stuck out his tongue and licked it clean. Soon, Jack had filled 2 metal buckets. He told his teammates to be very careful when pulling the rope, because this water was the squad's hope for survival. After all, they hadn't had a drink in 3 days, so the teammates pulled the rope carefully until the buckets were safely in their hands. Only then did their hearts finally settle. To ensure everyone got a chance to drink, he instructed everyone to take only a small sip, and only after everyone had had a turn did it come to the captain. Though there wasn't much water, it was enough to keep them alive. They thought their peaceful life would continue, but unexpectedly, that morning, an enemy armored vehicle suddenly appeared in the distance. The captain quickly ordered everyone to prepare for battle. Once the enemy entered their firing range, they opened fire indiscriminately. After a fierce battle, the enemy was ultimately routed and fled in disarray. Not only that, but they also captured 2 prisoners. Seeing how parched the prisoners looked, the captain instantly thought of a way to outwit them. He first had a teammate bring a cup of water, and took a small sip right in front of the prisoners. This instantly made the guy drool with envy. But then the captain made a surprising move. He pretended to pour the remaining water on the ground. The prisoner was instantly startled. That was such a waste. The captain poured another glass of water. Give up your army's position, and you get to drink. Faced with such a tempting offer of water, the prisoner couldn't resist. He immediately revealed their army's plan. It turned out they were a unit sent to search for water, but they hadn't had a drop of water in over 10 days. So now many of the soldiers couldn't even stand up, let alone go out and fight. Upon learning the enemy's situation, the captain immediately came up with a plan. First, he let the prisoners drink their fill. Then he released them, but on one condition: they had to tell their commander about the water here. If they wanted water, they'd have to trade their weapons for it. They had expected to obtain a large quantity of weapons, but what they never could have imagined was that Jack at the bottom of the well would soon climb back up. The water at the bottom of the well had already dried up, and if they stayed there any longer, they would surely die of thirst. In less than an hour, the enemy forces marched in a massive column toward them, but they did not launch a preemptive attack. Instead, they waited until the enemy entered the minefield before striking. Finally, after a fierce assault, the enemy was once again routed. However, 1 member of the squad was ultimately killed. Faced with the tragic death of their comrade, the remaining 8 were deeply grieved, but the enemy would surely return to seize the water, so they had no choice but to hold their ground. Soon, the enemy sent 2 soldiers over to negotiate. They warned the squad to hand over the water source, or else they would raze the place to the ground. But the squad leader wasn't the least bit afraid. Instead, he had 2 team members start taking a bath. This instantly made the parched enemy soldiers salivate with envy, unaware that this was a diversionary tactic orchestrated by the squad leader. The water they saw flowing from the bath was actually being channeled into another bucket. The goal was to make the enemy believe there was a water source here, so they would be tempted to exchange their weapons for it. The enemy seemed deeply resentful of this demand, and so the negotiations ended in failure. Soon, the enemy arrived with a large force, but when they charged up to the tank, they were stunned. They discovered that the enemy soldiers were on the verge of dying of thirst. Everyone raised their weapons and chose to surrender. The captain had no choice but to let the enemy drink from the dry well. To their surprise, there was actually water in the dry well. The 2 men could hardly believe their eyes. It seemed the enemy's earlier intense shelling had blown open the dry well again. While the enemy soldiers were drinking their fill, the 2 men confiscated all their weapons, and so, relying on his wit and ingenuity, the captain successfully took control of this 900-man army. Eventually, they waited for the arrival of Allied forces, and with that, the film ends.